Hi, this is Phil from In Godiva's Footsteps. I'm a tour guide offering local walks, talks, and research services all around Coventry's history. In this feature, we're going to be looking at the some of the history of Coventry City Football Club, right from its very beginnings back in 1883, and also particularly looking at some of my memories of the Highfield Road Stadium. This was the home to Coventry City between 1899 and 2006, and I attended my first match there in August 1973. So I'll be sharing with you some of my memories of that ground, looking at places related with the history of Coventry City in the immediate area around there, and throwing in some general pieces about history of the area. So I hope you enjoy this feature. We're going to start at the Old Bull Hotel, a pub situated on Bull Hill, about a mile to the east of Coventry City Centre. This was always a magnet for home and away fans before and after matches which were at Highfield Road. The name The Old Bull and the name Bull Hill will lead us to some sort of speculation about whether there had been more ancient forms of football which had been played in the area way before Coventry City came into existence. The pub itself, it does have some other connections with Coventry City. Goalkeeper Nat Robinson, who played for Coventry, also Chelsea and Birmingham City, was landlord of the Old Bull between 1911 and 1913.
We're now on Gosford Green, in an area that is very much associated with the history of Coventry City Football Club. Just in front of me, in the gap the gap between the houses, is King Richard Street. Gosford Green is very much associated with Richard II due to events that went on here and were actually portrayed in William Shakespeare's play, historical play William II. Now, as far as Coventry City is concerned, that road, King Richard Street, is quite significant. If you were to go to the bottom of there, before the demolition of Coventry City's Highfield Road ground, at the end of it you would see huge signage on the back of the main stand, basically proclaiming this is the home of Coventry City Football Club. The club's first ground, however, was back across the other side of the common, and if you can see the end of the terrace of white houses, right across on the other side of Binley Road, is an area close to Gosford Park Primary School, and that was where the first ever home of Coventry City was. We turn back round again. There's the red brick building over there is a hospital. It was previously the site, or just a little bit next to it, of the White Lion pub. Again, very much associated with the history of Coventry City. When the team played over in the field I've just shown you, that is where they would go and get changed. So the changing rooms were there. Just moving over, beyond that blue bush, you should be able to see a white building that many people who have lived in the area would associate that with Lloyd's Bank. It's actually, historically, it was the administration offices of Townend bicycle manufacturers, and behind it was their factory, one of many in this Hillfields area of Coventry, producing bicycles in the late 1800s, early 1900s. After it was taken over by the Humber Company, and basically they moved out after a fire and moved down to their nearby premises, which in the road that came to be known as Humber Road. One of those bicycle companies nearby in the Hillfields area was Singer, and out of the Singer factories came what was later to be known as Coventry City Football Club, originally known as Singer's FC. Just behind me here, you can see a bank of trees. Behind that is the A444 road, which is known as Jimmy Hill Way. Quite apt, as it more or less connects Coventry City's old ground, Highfield Road, with the new one, which is now known as the Coventry Building Society Arena. Most Coventrians will still call it the Rico. I'm now on the corner of King Richard Street and Britannia Street. If we look down the road at the end, on the junction of Britannia Street and Paynes Lane, over to the left hand corner, is the pub The Binley Oak. Again, another one that was very much associated with the early days of Coventry City Football Club. Up ahead of me we can see some new housing, and basically we're heading towards the side of Highfield Road, Coventry City's ground. What they have done is to actually leave quite a substantial grassed area in what was the pitch of Highfield Road. So we're going to go and have a look at that. My first ever visit to the ground was back in 1973, and I went there with my mum and her friend Jean on a night in early August 1973 when Coventry City were playing at home to Liverpool. They actually won that match 1-0. The ground was jam-packed, and basically after going to that match, I was basically a football fan and Coventry City fan for life after that. So we're just approaching where the ground used to be. So we've just basically gone past the area where the main stand was. Over towards my left here was the West Stand and West End. So we had the main stand over here. Opposite me there was the stand called the Sky Blue Stand. Over on the eastern side of the ground was the Cop, and that was where I stood on the first match that I ever went to, and I was right up high on a wooden structure at the top of the Cop that was called the Crow's Nest. And again, that was jam-packed with people. You could look down and see through the wooden beams that made it up down below you. So that match, it was quite exceptional in that who went on to be my hero, Tommy Hutchison, scored a cracking volley from about 35 yards out, and City won the match 1-0. So that was my first ever match at Highfield Road. So I was standing up high in an area over there as 9 years old. Coincidentally, my first match, along with most other Coventry City football fans, at the Rico several years later, the coincidence about that was that Jean, my mum's friend who I came along here with to my first match at Highfield Road, was his grandmother to Ian Everett, who played in Premier League with Blackpool. He played with Derby, lots of other teams, Chesterfield, QPR, and on the day of the first ever match at the Rico, Ian Evatt was playing. However, he was playing as centre half for Queen's Park Rangers. So that's like a nice little personal sort of coincidence of my first matches, both here at Highfield Road and at what I still can't help but call the Rico. I'm now on the corner of
The
King Richard
recent
Street and Britannia
2022
Street.
Winter World Cup has prompted me to think about some of the matches that I saw at Highfield Road during my school days in the 70s. And a lot of these will be pretty much forgotten, and most people would have been completely unaware of them. Right at the start of the World Cup, we saw Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, who went on to win the competition. Also, we saw Japan beat one of the favourites, Germany. And that takes me back to the 70s of matches in Coventry when both of those countries visited us. In 1978, the Japanese national team made their first visit to the UK, and that visit included a match at Highfield Road against the Sky Blues, Coventry City winning 2-0, a match that I was at. Another match that I was at a couple of years earlier than that was at Kirby Corner Road, the home of Coventry Sporting Club, both unfortunately now not there. Sporting drew 0-0 with Saudi Arabia. At the time, the Saudi national team was pretty much under the control and of Jimmy Hill, who had Coventry City connections, and managed by Bill McGarry, the former Wolves manager. And it seemed quite extraordinary to see like Arabs in Arab garb along at Kirby Corner Road playing a small non-league team, and it ending up in a 0-0 draw. That brings me on to other matches at Highfield Road featuring Coventry Sporting Club. Their most famous was another match that I was at in the 75-76 season when they got to the second round of the FA Cup, having gone through all of the qualifying rounds, and they won 1-0 against Tranmere Rovers of the Football League, then 4th Division, who went on to achieve promotion. They then went on to the second round where they lost 4-0 to Peterborough at Highfield Road. Now, one of the stories associated with this is that one of the Coventry Sporting players during all of the qualifying rounds had worn his Bill Glazier testimonial fund tie and kept doing that as a ritual when they were on the winning run. Bill Glazier was goalkeeper at Coventry City from throughout the 60s and through up to like the mid 70s, and one of my favourites. In his testimonial match, another match that I attended at Highfield Road, this was in the 74-75 season, Coventry City played the England 1966 World Cup winning team, and this ended up in a 6-all draw. Another little tie there is that within that team was Jimmy Greaves, and I also saw him playing at Coventry Sporting when they drew later on that season 0-0 in a friendly with Weymouth. Other connections are that Coventry Sporting Club were originally known as Coventry Amateurs, and they originally, before they moved to Kirby Corner, played at the Butts Stadium, where Coventry Rugby Club now play, Coventry United, who play in the red and green that Sporting used to play in, now play there. When Sporting were basically made homeless, when their ground that they had become tenants to was sold by the brewery to National Grid, they were hoping to return to the Butts, but were not able to, as the Coventry City Council then said that they didn't want that ground to be dominated by one club. So they basically went out of business at that time. But they were originally known as Coventry Amateurs, which brings me on to another match at Highfield Road, which was the last ever amateur international. And this was at the end of the 1973-74 season, so the first season that I started watching football at Highfield Road. And it was between England and Scotland amateurs. And the Scotland amateur team was more or less the Queen's Park team, who used to play at Hampden Park, the home of Scotland international team. They were amateurs in a league that was semi-professional and professional at that time. But basically that saw the end of the sort of non-league days of amateur football. So the FA Amateur Cup was replaced by the FA Trophy and FA Vase, and that was the last that we ever saw of an amateur international at Highfield Road. Also on that day, as a pre-match to the main one, Coventry City youth team played Grasshoppers of Doric, so another little international connection. One of the most unusual international connections with Highfield Road was the fact that in the 1950s, Harlem Globetrotters basketball team gave had an exhibition match there. Also, another match that I didn't actually attend, it was before I started going, was in the 72-73 season, when world famous Eusebio, playing for Portugal, played at Highfield Road against Northern Ireland in a World Cup qualifier, basically due to the troubles in Northern Ireland, and a lot of sporting events there were suspended or moved. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little feature about some of my memories of Highfield Road and football in the city. I shall be going on to look in detail at different seasons, starting from when I started going in 1973, and giving a few more detailed memories of Highfield Road and me following Coventry City through the years. So hopefully you'll look out for some of that on my YouTube channel. Thank you for listening.